United States Grand Prix 2005. This wasn't just a bad day. This was a catastrophe broadcast live to the world. The 2005 US Grand Prix at Indianapolis should have been a celebration. Packed stands, 16 drivers on the grid, big energy. But behind the scenes, Michelin was in full panic mode. Their tyres were falling apart during practice, literally shredding at speed. After Ralf Schumacher's violent crash in the same spot as the year before, Michelin told its teams the truth. You can't race safely. No spare tyres, no backup plan. So on race day, the unthinkable happened. 14 cars, everyone on Michelin rubber, pulled into the pit lane and parked. The fans watched in disbelief as only 6 cars lined up. Ferrari, Jordan, Minardi, that's it. The race still went ahead. The FIA refused to add a chicane or delay the event. The result? An absolute PR nightmare. Fans booed, threw debris onto the track, and walked out in waves. Michael Schumacher won, but nobody cared. He barely celebrated. The US audience felt duped. F1's credibility took a massive hit. Lawsuits were filed, sponsors were livid, and the American fan base, gone. F1 wouldn't return to the US for 6 more years. Singapore Grand Prix 2008. This race didn't just break the rules, it rewrote the definition of race fixing, ending up being one of the dirtiest stories in the sport's history. Early on, Renault's Nelson Piquet Jr. spun into the wall at turn 17, triggering a safety car. Harmless, right? Except it was deliberate. He was told to crash, on purpose. The strategy? Clear the track so teammate Fernando Alonso, who had just pitted early, could leapfrog the field. It worked. Alonso cruised to a brilliant win while everyone else scrambled. At the time, no one suspected a thing. But a year later, Piquet blew the lid off. He'd been pressured by team bosses Flavio Briatore and Pat Simons to take one for the team. The FIA launched a full investigation. The fallout? Nuclear. Briatore got banned indefinitely. Simons was out. Renault nearly got tossed from the championship. The scandal stained Alonso's win, even though he was never directly implicated. Fans were furious. Rival teams were disgusted. Sponsors backed off. And it all happened under bright lights in front of millions. The moment a team crossed the line from tactics into straight-up race manipulation. No grey area. Just a hard stop. And a reminder of how far some teams were willing to go to win. Belgian Grand Prix 2021. This was hands down the most ridiculous race in modern F1. Spa-Francorchamps, known for drama and danger, delivered neither. Instead, fans got 3 laps behind a safety car and a result sheet that made 0 sense. The day started with heavy rain. Then more rain. Visibility was garbage. Grip non-existent. Hours passed. Drivers waited in the garage. Marshals stood around with towels. Fans, soaking wet in the grandstands, held out hope. Finally, after multiple delays, the cars headed out. But they never went racing. No overtakes, no green flags, just a few slow laps in single file behind the safety car. Then came the twist. The FIA called it a race. Since 2 laps had technically been completed, they handed out half points. Max Verstappen won, George Russell got his first career podium, and Lewis Hamilton finished 3rd. All without a single real racing move. Fans booed. Broadcasters were stunned. Even the drivers looked embarrassed on the podium. Hamilton called it a farce. Verstappen admitted it felt hollow. Russell accepted the trophy, but even he knew it was weird. The FIA's decision triggered a storm of criticism from fans and media alike. In the aftermath, the rules were changed. No more podiums without actual racing laps. Now, before we get into the next race, please help us beat the algorithm by hitting that like button and subscribing. Now, moving on. San Marino Grand Prix 1994. This weekend didn't just break F1, it shattered it. It was supposed to be another stop in the season. Instead, it became the darkest chapter in Formula One history. It began on Friday. Rubens Barrichello launched off a curb and slammed into the fencing at 140 miles per hour. He survived, but it was a brutal warning. The next day, things got worse. Rookie Roland Ratzenberger, driving for Simtech, suffered a front wing failure at full speed. He crashed into a wall at over 190 miles per hour. He was pronounced dead within minutes. The first driver fatality during a race weekend in 12 years. But the nightmare didn't stop there. On Sunday, the race started with chaos. JJ Leto stalled on the grid. Pedro Lamy slammed into the back of him. Debris flew into the crowd, injuring spectators. Then, on lap 7, the unthinkable happened. Ayrton Senna, the sports icon, flew off at Tamburello. No spin, no error. Just a violent, high-speed crash straight into a concrete wall. His car shattered. A suspension arm pierced his helmet. He was declared dead hours later. The entire paddock was in shock. The sport had failed its heroes. Imola forced F1 to wake up. In the aftermath, the FIA overhauled safety, redesigned tracks, safer cars, medical protocols. All of it began here. Senna's death was a turning point. And Imola 1994 remains a scar the sport will never erase. Mexican Grand Prix 2016. This one turned into a full-on rules circus. It started with Verstappen. Late in the race, he locked up defending Ricciardo and skipped across the grass at turn 1. Obvious shortcut. Everyone expected a penalty. Nothing came, so Verstappen held position. Then Sebastian Vettel, chasing both Red Bulls, made a bold lunge on Ricciardo into turn 4. Slight contact, hard defence, no penalty again. Tensions were boiling. Vettel's radio exploded. He screamed at the FIA, demanded Verstappen move over, and then dropped a legendary on-air bomb on race director Charlie Whiting. The fans could hear every word. Then the flags dropped. Verstappen 3rd, Vettel 4th. But wait, minutes later, Verstappen got penalised for that shortcut. Vettel bumped up to 3rd. He went to the cool-down room, got ready for the podium, and then he got hit with a penalty for moving under braking while defending Ricciardo. So after all the yelling and shuffling, Ricciardo got the podium spot. The final top 3 had changed 3 times in under 30 minutes. It was complete chaos. The FIA took a beating in the media. Fans had no idea what the rules were anymore. Drivers were fed up. And F1 left Mexico that year not with celebration, but with questions, finger-pointing, and a new chapter in race control inconsistency. European Grand Prix, 1997. This race wasn't just for the win. It was for the championship. Schumacher versus Villeneuve. One final shootout in Jerez. But what unfolded was less of a duel and more of a reputation collapse on live television. Both drivers were tied on points heading into the season finale. Villeneuve qualified fastest, but in a bizarre twist, 3 drivers, including Schumacher, set the exact same time down to the 1,000th. Schumacher started second. From the green light, it was tense. No margin for error. Then, on lap 48, Villeneuve made his move, diving inside Schumacher at the dry sack hairpin, and that's when it happened. Schumacher turned in late and tagged Villeneuve's car with his front right. The contact was clumsy and transparent. Schumacher's Ferrari ended up beached in the gravel. Villeneuve kept going, damaged but alive. He limped the car home in 3rd, scoring enough to seal the title. The racing world was stunned. The FIA opened an investigation. Days later, they ruled Schumacher had made a deliberate move to take Villeneuve out of the race. He wasn't just penalised, he was disqualified from the entire championship standings, his name erased from the final table. It was the only time in F1 history a driver had been wiped from the records like that. No fine, no points, just a career stain that never fully faded. Las Vegas Grand Prix, 2023. F1 hyped it like the second coming. Neon lights, glitzy promos, celebrity arrivals, and a $500 million investment to turn the Las Vegas Strip into a street circuit. But right out the gate, it hit the wall. Literally. During the first practice session, Carlos Sainz's Ferrari struck a loose manhole cover at 200 miles per hour. The impact shredded his car's floor and battery system. Session stopped. Red flags. Then cancelled. The entire track had to be re-inspected. F1 mechanics scrambled. Officials panicked. And the fans? They were kicked out. Thousands who had paid top dollar for opening day access were cleared out of the stands at 1:30 a.m., right before the second practice session resumed behind closed doors. No refunds. No explanations beyond operational logistics. The backlash was immediate. Social media torched F1. News outlets slammed the disorganisation. It was the most expensive race launch in years, and they forgot to check the bolts on a manhole. The race itself ended up being entertaining. Verstappen won, of course. Overtakes happened. The track raced better than expected. But the damage was already done. People didn't remember the action. They remembered the embarrassment. Sainz took a grid penalty for needing new components, despite hitting an unsecured fixture. Fans lost trust. Vegas got mocked. And the whole ordeal became a masterclass in what happens when marketing takes priority over motorsport. Canadian Grand Prix 2011. Well, this one turned into the longest F1 race in history. 4 hours, red flags, restarts, crashes and chaos that never seemed to end. From the start, rain hammered the circuit. Visibility was poor. Grip was non-existent. Cars were skating across the track like it was an ice rink. By lap 25, the safety car was out, and soon after, the race was red flagged. For over 2 hours, drivers sat in the pit lane, fans huddled under ponchos, and broadcasters ran out of things to say. When racing finally resumed, the real madness kicked in. Jenson Button collided with his teammate Lewis Hamilton early, got a drive-through penalty, dropped to the back, and had to pit 6 times. At one point, he was dead last. Then came the comeback. As the track dried and chaos continued, Button carved through the field, lap by lap. Sebastian Vettel led nearly the entire race until the final lap. Under pressure, he slid wide. Button pounced, took the lead, and won the race by just 2.7 seconds. It was one of the most dramatic victories ever. But for fans and teams, it tested every ounce of patience. Strategy went out the window, so did the clock. And while Button walked away with glory, everyone else just wanted to go home and dry off. The race lasted 4 hours, 4 minutes and 39 seconds. No one's ever forgotten it, mostly because no one thought it would ever end. San Marino Grand Prix, 1982. This race was chaos before the lights even went out. Political infighting between FISA and FOCA meant most of the grid didn't even show up. Just 14 cars lined up in Imola. No McLaren, no Williams, no Lotus. It was a ghost grid. But Ferrari? They were ready to put on a show at home. Gilles Villeneuve and Didier Pironi were running 1-2 late in the race, comfortably ahead. Team orders came in, hold position. Villeneuve, loyal to the core, backed off. Pironi didn't. With 2 laps to go, he dove past and snatched the win. On the podium, Villeneuve looked stunned, cold, betrayed. He believed Pironi had stabbed him in the back in front of Ferrari's home crowd. The aftermath turned tragic. Villeneuve vowed never to speak to Pironi again. Just 2 weeks later, at Zolder during qualifying, Villeneuve was killed in a high-speed crash. Many believe he was still driving with anger that weekend, pushing too hard to out-qualify his teammate. Ferrari never publicly addressed the betrayal. Pironi's win stayed on the books, but the cost was irreparable, and that's it. So, Which of these races do you think embarrassed F1 the most? Comment down below. As you leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos like this one.